Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm Michael from Premier Speakers Bureau. We have Peter Sheahan with us today. Peter's the CEO of ChangeLabs and a very well-known keynote speaker. In fact, it's almost impossible to book Peter because he is booked so far out. Peter, thanks for joining us today.
Michael, pleasure to be with you, and we value our partnership with Premier, so it's nice to spend some time.
And it's good to hear another Australian accent. Always good.
Yeah, this is a little bit nepotistic, but that's okay.
So Peter, what have you been up to lately? What's the week of Peter Sheahan look like? You're speaking, but you're obviously a successful businessman. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what you've been up to.
Yeah, we balance our life between being on the platform and talking essentially about innovation and change and how industries need to adapt and leaders need to adapt with that. And we balance that with the fact that at ChangeLabs we're doing that very thing ourselves with staff in 3 countries and 9 cities, and we're going to execute 14,000 workshops this year on behalf of our clients, which include people like Apple and IBM.
Wow.
I find myself kind of oscillating between being a CEO and leading a company and working with senior leaders about understanding market trends and where that goes. So just between those 2 things, I keep myself pretty busy, to be perfectly honest.
And the crossover of those businesses is very unique. ChangeLabs is a think tank of sorts, right? Or how would you explain ChangeLabs to people?
Yeah, ChangeLabs basically occupies the space between business need and market need. And by that I mean we execute programs that develop and generate demand for our clients, yet at the same time add significant value to the community, the stakeholder, or the marketplace that client serves. And in a way, you would probably put us in the category of behavior change. We literally work with marketplaces to see if we can influence the way they buy, the attributes by which they make their decisions, and we do that on behalf of some pretty big clients.
Wow, okay. So the keynotes that we're most hearing you speak about is innovation. An event planner books Peter Sheahan. What do they get? You do a lot of preparation. You obviously have a large staff. Tell me a little bit how that process works, and tell me a little bit about your innovation keynote, how and what a client gets when they have you come speak on that.
Well, yeah, I think the first thing to understand is that it's very difficult for someone in a role like mine to really add value to a client without a deep understanding of what the marketplace is doing, where the kind of meta trends are taking that industry. So we won't take a job unless a client's prepared to go deep and brief. Mm-hmm. And we want to know, 1, what's happening in the market, 2, what role this event is meant to play in moving that market, whether it be an association or an offsite or a leadership experience of something. And then 3, most importantly, what value I, as a presenter in that environment, can bring to that conversation. So that's where we start in our briefing process. We then move specifically into behavioral shifts. So if your people are currently thinking A and you want them to think B, I really need my clients to articulate what that looks like. Now, I'll flavor that and bring my worldview to that, but I need to be able to deliver on their objectives. So we start with a pretty significant briefing process. Mm-hmm. The second thing we look for is industry publications, internal white papers, strategy documents. We'll review analyst calls if it's a publicly listed company, and we try and bring all of that information together to make sure we can map our worldview with the industry context. And our clients help us with that, and we do a lot of that stuff ourselves. With 75 staff, you have the ability to really drive research hard. And we are heavy on research and light on marketing because we find that the more you customize and really deliver value, you don't need a lot of marketing, to be perfectly frank. And then the final part of that is for me to then fold back, and we'll often do this all in the same briefing process, feed back to the client how I intend to approach that challenge. And time and time again, it's really been our point of difference in the marketplace. I think clients need to be more demanding right now. I think people want to know what return they're getting on their investment. And you used to have speakers who were entertaining or speakers who were content heavy. And I think the people who can intersect them both with very specific industry application, I think those speakers are doing very well right now. So that's basically our approach. And as for, say, the topic of innovation, and we essentially play in 3 areas: innovation, 2, driving intimacy in the marketplace through things like collaboration and co-creation, and 3, looking at execution, which is post the first 2 if you really think about it. Yeah. And your question was directly related to innovation. Look, I think there's 2 things to think about on that topic. Number 1, industries are without question going through an inflection point right now. I mean, I'm yet to find a marketplace that is not evolving rapidly. And the challenge that leaders have in that industry is that they, or regardless of what that industry is they take historical perspective, like successful strategies that have worked in the past, and they use that perspective to filter the market opportunity in the present and therefore the strategy as to what they're going to work on moving forward. So when we talk about innovation, we talk a lot about assumptions. That is the assumptions a business, the assumptions a leader is making about where the market opportunity is and where that market is going and how to best exploit that. But I think the second thing around innovation that's really important right now is I actually think we're being conned to think that innovation is about bright, sexy, and new. And in reality, when you unpack the businesses with the best margins who are exploiting market opportunity most effectively, they aren't necessarily bringing out the most cutting edge products. They are generally just executing better. And we talk a lot about what we call non-sexy innovation. How do you design process? How do you design structure? How do you re-engineer the sales process, for instance, to extract as much value from a client as you can? They're very unsexy things, but they unlock huge margins and huge opportunities. So I think, I could talk for about another 5 hours on that, so probably best stop.
But that is, and that's where I guess your keynote, you've got a keynote on making money in the cracks. Is that where that sort of comes in, which is, is that kind of there's low-hanging fruit out there? Is that how to make money? Or
so making money in the cracks is essentially looking at two things. Number one, if you think about globalization, if you think about the massive competition we face even just in the local market, if you think about the regulatory frameworks that are starting to really influence industry right now, you realize that complexity has gone through the roof. I mean, the complexity of the client problem, the complexity of the service or product required to solve that problem is much higher now than it was even 3 years ago. Yet at the same time, complexity drives specialization. So you have product experts, you have industry experts, but the real money gets made when you bring those things together, like the cracks between the disciplines, literally. So we're doing a lot of work with organizations right now around how they go to market as one company, how they extract the best of all of their functions, all their disciplines. Sales working with marketing, marketing working with ops, bringing, it's kind of like one company solving problems. And two, you can't solve the client problem without the client involved. This whole transaction idea of tell me your needs, I'll go back in my little dark room and find a solution and then you'll buy it from me. Those days are dying a very painful death. We are now much more heavily invested with our clients and our clients with us than we ever were before. And this much more collaborative selling approach, this co-creative model for working with our clients, that's what making money in the cracks is essentially about.
And how is that change? How are you seeing that change leadership models or way people are needing to lead?
Well, you're seeing it's quite an interesting question because leaders are responding in multiple ways. There is a lot of restructuring going on right now where they are trying to reorient the organization so that they are forced to work together to solve client problems. Two, you have leaders who are messing with incentive systems right now. I mean, I have a client who is doubling the sales kickback for a salesperson if they co-created with another continent to get a need met, which is an interesting and, important transition, but I think it's only a small part of the process. I think the real response that leaders need to have is they need to facilitate these conversations. In other words, they need to take an active role in creating environments for the collaboration and the co-creation to take place. That doesn't mean they have to have all the answers. It just means they have to create an environment for it to take place, whether that be between their product experts and the client or whether that between sales and marketing. And I think it's forcing leaders to be more mature. It's forcing leaders to be a little more patient in the way they allocate, delegate, and execute in a way. And I think it's taking a much higher level of emotional intelligence. Although we don't do a lot on leadership style, we're much more interested in how to exploit the market opportunity that represents.
Gotcha. Very, very interesting. My head's about to explode.
Already getting started.
And you're also talking about complexities of client problems. client issues. Tell us a little bit about that and what you see the trends are there, how companies need to change the way they're handling those kind of issues.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question to answer without knowing the specific industry. So,
Gotcha.
for instance, if you're in financial services, then Dodd-Frank and fiduciary responsibility are driving an external force that is changing fundamentally the way an investment advisor or a broker-dealer executes and engages with their client. If you're talking to a manufacturer, their complexity is in the volatility of commodity prices and input costs, and how do they manage supply and demand long-term, keep their inventory low enough that they don't wear huge... I mean, it's a very difficult question to answer without knowing the industry.
Gotcha.
And to be honest, I think rather than talk about the complexity, let's talk about what we have seen across industries, perhaps in terms of not dealing with it very well, right? So there's two things that are very dangerous right now that we're seeing leaders do, probably three actually. One is to be somewhat paralyzed by the uncertainty and literally having an inability to make decisions to track a new path, and that sometimes manifests itself as doing the same thing I've always done and expecting the same results. Sometimes it manifests itself literally as we just don't know what to do next, right? I think number two, you have the opposite reaction to that, which is equally dangerous, and it is an urgency addiction where you have organizations and leaders driving their people into one priority after the next, after the next, after the next, and people find themselves so sort of reactive that they never step back and see what the smart play is. What's the 80-20? What's the 20% gives you the 80% result? Because they're too busy reacting. The third is leaders try to get their organization to just do too much. The amount of companies that we walk into that have 55 strategic initiatives owned by the same 4 people and wonder why nothing gets done would disturb any intelligent person, you know? And it's this idea that we try and throw a lot of mud at the wall and hope some of it sticks, when what we would be better doing is placing strategic and risk-controlled bets on 3 to 5 areas that we're really going to play hard in. And that ability for the leader to have the discipline and the courage, the confidence to make that decision, to be focused, I think that's crucial when dealing with complexity in the marketplace. You have to place a bet. You have to.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So your last book, Making It Happen, was all about execution. Have you been speaking much on that topic? And I know I've had a couple of jobs for you on that. Tell me a little bit how that is going. And that book is a little bit different from your previous flip and so forth. Yeah. It's all about execution. And I've read the book, and as you say in there, there's millions of ideas floating around, but then no one's doing anything with them. Tell us a little bit about that and how that book came to be, and you talk.
Yeah. So look, in a way, I was just talking a little bit about what the large company application of making it happen is. It's about getting out of paralysis, firstly, 2, avoiding an addiction to being reactive and urgency, and 3, being very clear and narrow in where you're going to focus the organization's energy. I mean, you got to remember that a leader has so much leverage. When a leader makes a decision to take his or her business in a certain direction, entire systems and structures and resources move in that direction. But if you're spread, you're not getting anywhere. So in a way, that is, in essence, what Making It Happen is about. The book itself, however, was quite specifically targeted for smaller businesses, to be perfectly honest. And it's not that, I probably speak more about making it happen to larger organizations than I do to, say, associations of small business owners, but the principles still apply. Number one, are you getting really, really clear on the value you want to bring to the market? 2, are you packaging and positioning that information in a way that aligns to the actual market need? Because so often you see small business owners obsessed with what they're interested in and not necessarily what the market is interested in. And 3, is your sales, marketing, business development process rigorous, sophisticated enough to really convince the client that you can meet that need that you've packaged your product to meet? And then the question is, what do you do with the trust and equity that you've built when you start delivering solutions? I mean, that's 4 of the 5 principles that are in Making It Happen, but it's much more for the small business owner, say up to 50 staff, than it is for the major organization. Yeah,
it's a great read. And below the screen you're looking at now, we do have all Peter's books. Click on those. You can buy them. And the first meeting planner to call in will have a copy to send out to you. So call in quick. Peter, obviously you're at the top of trends. Like you looking at the trends, you can just see from the way your books have followed what's been going on in society. You're on top of it. Tell me, what are ChangeLabs looking at? I know we've spoken, you and I, about compelled to buy. Tell me a little bit more about that and where you see that going, and what is that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so we have got two areas of research right now. One is in behavior change. How do you orchestrate large-scale changes in the way people behave? And that's really what we're famous for at ChangeLabs. But we have a very interesting and targeted piece of research right now, which we call compelled to buy. And it's this notion that organizations are increasingly finding it difficult to sustainably compete on price. And they find that when they elevate out of price into, say, features and benefits, it becomes a price war anyway. In other words, they get sucked back in to who can do it for less. And we know that's unsustainable, it's bad for your margins, et cetera, et cetera. So what we are studying in a very empirical way, and we've got clients that we're literally in the field right now shadowing sales and marketing professionals, looking at how do you compete on knowledge and expertise instead of on price, even service or features and benefits. In other words, if problems are more complex, clients are looking for partners that don't just have the perfect solution today, but believe will have the perfect solution tomorrow as well. And they are literally buying, we're seeing this already, they are buying from the people they perceive to be, quote unquote, the smartest people in the room. Now, I know that's got a negative connotation with Enron, et cetera, because of the film, but they literally want to partner with people who know what's going on. And I think organizations have done historically a pretty ordinary job, to be honest, with taking what they know and packaging it in a way that the market can go, wow, these guys have really got their finger on the pulse. So we're looking at it in 4 dimensions. Number one, strategy. How do you build an organization around a value proposition of being the smartest, the most knowledgeable, the experts in your field? 2, how do you then package your marketing? What activities, what investments would you be making there? What language, what sort of publications and collateral would you be developing? 3, and probably most interesting for your clients, I'd imagine, is how do you sell that? So when you go into the field tactically to execute on that, what does being the smartest person in the room look like? And then 4, how do you hand off in the sales process into operations to do 2 things? Number 1, deliver on the expectation that you've created in the mind of the client. But 2, make sure there's a feedback loop that goes back into sales, marketing, and strategy based on what you've learned, so you can consistently be the most knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And it's the most knowledgeable not just in your product and not just in the industry vertical, but in the intersection between your product and the industry vertical. It's called Compelled to Buy, and it's empirical, it's deep, it's data heavy, but it's extremely practical in its application. And obviously we bring a lot of energy to any topic that we do. So it's not ready to go to market yet. I wouldn't be, if I was a meeting planner between now and June, I wouldn't be booking that. Not that I'd be able to take the date anyway, to be honest with you. But certainly for 2013 events, anyone that's involved in a competitive market who has a sales force or a function of establishing value in some business development way, that's going to be a very good and interesting area for them to explore.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. Peter, one last thing I want to talk about. People that have you speak at events, you give away the videos. Tell me a little bit about those. It's a series. Our clients absolutely love them, and that's one of the things we always hear back about. Love the videos. Tell me a little bit about those. What they are and how that works.
Well, we're a behavior change company, effectively. So we do large-scale behavior change and market development, as I described, say, earlier in the talk. It would be pretty wrong not to apply the principles of behavior change to the thought leadership practice as well. I don't think clients buy speeches. Some do, and they're not really my, clients who like me don't just want someone to come up and do a tap dance, if you know what I mean. They don't want to know that you climbed a mountain and they can too. They want somebody who's going to bring real content and have an impact on their business. Well, you massively augment your ability to have an impact on the business is if you follow the keynote with some repetitive, insightful messaging when your delegates get back to work. So we build 1-year programs that go on the back of our keynote. So it's 26 videos, one every 2 weeks, 4 to 5 minutes, talking about a key insight, usually a case study, with 2 or 3 ideas of how you could apply that in any business, any size, any shape, any market. And clients love it because their people change as a result.
Yeah.
Instead of just going to a speech and being inspired and going, wow, I can change the world, they end up being anchored back to that learning over a period of time. And some of our clients have gotten so excited about it, they've actually made a very small investment to put their own logo and conference branding on that video series as well. But you don't even need to do that. It's part of the keynote fee, because I'm not in the business of giving speeches. I'm in the business of behavior change.
And they're fantastic. And Peter, it's after hearing you speak just on now, I'm not surprised that it's so hard for me to book you anymore. But you're fantastic, and Peter truly does care about the event. He spends so much time preparing. He's got a staff that takes care of it. And I can guarantee that if you book Peter, you are going to get some great results. And the feedback from your attendees is unbelievable. I have never received anything but 10 out of 10 for Peter. And they book him again. The only problem is he's never available because he's booked so far out.
No, you should look. It's always worth a try. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. We really value what we do, and we can't do 200 jobs a year.
That's right. Yeah, and
kind of value.
When you spend as much time as you do preparing, and you do such a good job, and it really is fantastic. Peter, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And as I said before, below the screen here, we've got all of Peter's books. You can take a look at some of his speaking videos, more in-depth look at those speech topics, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Michael.
All right.